over-the-counter derivative arrangement, there are substantial fees charged by the broker-dealer, and part of those fees are equivalent to margin. That their attempt to price the risk, and every transaction has risk. And so when we talk about the end user being assessed a margin requirement or not assessed a margin requirement, isn't it the reality that there is a built-in risk premium or something like margin in there? And the question really is, if there's a requirement under these rules to have a formal margin or even a contingent margin, the question is really, is that paid for by the issuing broker dealer, or is it paid for by the customer, or is it? And in these situations where most of them are no competitive market, it could be fully passed on to the customer. Is that more of the question we're dealing with here, rather than who pays, rather than who's covering the risk?
Chairman, to clear it up, there's essentially two types of fees that the end user is charged, some of which are not transparent, and some of which are. There are, and there's been Senator Toomey and Senator Crapo correctly discussed the clearing fees, the margin, or indeed the capital fees that go that get held aside for each individual trade, whether it be within a clearinghouse where it's an objective fee that's dictated by the risk model of that clearinghouse, or whether it be a subjective fee set by the broker-dealer that extends a credit relationship to that entity. And it is indeed the subjectivity of that fee relationship that got us into trouble in 2008, because incumbent dealers, essentially extended open and fee relationships to entities such as AIG, and then requested the bailout. But from the end user standpoint, from what I've heard from Chairman Gensler, as we participated in roundtables and had meetings with him and read his public comments, it's our understanding that there is an exemption for end users vis-a-vis margin. That said, end users still have to pay their own way. They don't get a free ride on every trade that they do. They have to set aside the appropriate amount of capital for each trade, and that's only fair and appropriate within the marketplace. The argument against that then is capital formation. Well, isn't this going to take money off our balance sheets, and we really had nothing to do with AIG? We would say this: well, you're trading derivatives, so you have to come in the same way as everybody else. What you should also look, though, is at the benefits of the lessened execution fees that can occur. For example, if you take a standard credit default 5-year trade, if I want to buy default protection on GECC, and I get charged 5 basis points on the bid-offer spread, for a $5 million round lot trade, that's $21,000 per trade. Now, likewise, in the futures world, the execution fees are maybe $10, $15, $20. So you can see the contrast between a transparent liquid marketplace and the lack of transparency in the CDS and the interest rate swap markets. Now, the way to benefit then is to bring these markets into a transparent, open, competitive marketplace, such that $21,000 fee, and as one of the gentlemen on the panel correctly surmised, that it is about 40 or 50 billion of execution fees. You create competition. You bring transparency into the marketplace. You bring multiple dealers, not just 5 or 6 or 10 dealers, but 30 or 40 or 50 dealers in to compete. And you open up clearinghouses away not just from 5 or 6 or 10 constituent clearing members who also have execution desks as well. So there may or may not be a conflict of interest there. What we do focus on is the benefit of taking that $50 billion worth of execution fees and driving it downwards to 10. Leaving the resultant $40 billion on the balance sheets of corporate America, so they can go out and indeed hire people and invest in their respective companies and industries.
Thank you. And Mr. Lewis,